Hello, I'm Ben. Welcome to the channel. So today we're going to talk about education. There's been a lot of back and forth about education in the news in recent years, with school loans being, dismissed and college debt, etc. It's been on people's foremost thoughts. So let's just say this: I had college debt. I paid it off myself. I think if you take out loans, you should take care of them yourself. I think that's how that works. But the bit about education, there's been a lot of back and forth of stuff that's just not true. And so this is what I want to share. And this is my point of view, but look into it and see if it's not relevant to what you're thinking. The idea that you can earn as much without a collegiate education or a specialty trade education as you could with is incorrect. It's wrong. People that have trade degrees and people that have collegiate degrees ultimately over the span of their lifetime earn more money. People that don't, that earn a lot of money in jobs that is high risk or is high activity or very physically based on your body and your physical prowess, those jobs last 15 to 20 years typically. Meaning your body's going to break down over time. You're not going to be as strong 10 years from now as you are now, unless you're in your teens, right? You basically get stronger up until you're about 32, 33 years old. And past 35, your testosterone starts to change. Ladies, you maintain your normal hormones typically to about the age of 40. But basically, physically, between 35 and 40, all human beings start to decline from a standpoint of your physicality and the hormones your body produces and how you can maintain the recovery from activity. So if you're in a business, and people in nursing and in hospitals that work 12 and 14, 15-hour shifts, 16-hour shifts, people in EMS, you'll see this all the time. They have extreme issues in their ankles, knees, and hips because over time, it wears your body slap out to be on your feet all that time. That's what this is suggesting. So the more education you have, the suggestion is the less physical labor you have to do. That's why I push leadership. If you get into leadership, no matter what the business is, ultimately you can build and sustain and support teams, and you learn the business from there. That's a job that when your physicality starts to diminish and mentality continues to expand, you can become a seasoned and very professional, very well received, very well needed leader to lead in industries that you once maybe worked physically. So not to go too far down a rabbit hole, but around education, there's basically 10 different steps to education. It doesn't have to be collegiate. You don't have to go to college or university to get education. If you started as an apprentice somewhere and someone who's done things for years taught you how to do things and not made the mistakes they made when they're younger, that's education, okay? If you're doing those things, an apprenticeship was it was the primary way people got into professions 100 years ago. So think about it. It's in the 2020s now. In the 1920s, you had colleges and universities. In the 1820s, you had some colleges and universities. Between the 1820s and 1920s, though, the majority of professionals, including attorneys and doctors, physicians, clinicians, those people came from apprenticeships. The same type training that welders or horseshoers or iron workers got back then, that was where those professional expectations came from. And as we generated more ways of education to spread the correct ideas and best practices, that's where universities and colleges came from. And then there's a point where universities and colleges picked up bodies of knowledge from our history and our past and our language and those type things and shared that as education too, and it continued. Most of education prior to those years was word of mouth and storytelling. So I grew up in the States. My history is English and native to this country, so Native American. And the Native American educations and beliefs all came from stories, and it was sustained through their language and through their stories. As the centuries progressed, many of those have been lost. So that's why I have a hunger for books, because you can gain all that knowledge and wisdom from things that was lost and have that still and carry that on, because all things do get lost in time. But that's how education has progressed. Now, these days, you have jobs and you have companies that require very specific educational standards, very specific degrees. For instance, if you have physicians that move to the United States from outside the United States and they didn't get their degrees from a proper university that's accredited based on our university system, then most likely, even though they're a licensed physician and maybe were practicing elsewhere in the world, they don't get that job here. They'd have to start education differently here. So you have people with very advanced degrees elsewhere in the world that here are working in lesser jobs or in more manual labor type jobs because those credentials aren't required or aren't appreciated here like they are there. So that's what it comes down to really, is credentialing. So education in my mind is, do you have the credentials to do the job? That may mean you have the experience, you've been on the job for a while. That's the best education because you've done it firsthand. Are you an apprentice? Have you been taught by somebody who's been doing it a very long time and you have the basics, and based with their knowledge, you have that apprenticeship type education? Or have you been schooled in some way, shape, or form and have experience that supports your schooling and now are looking to increase your experience with that education? So those things are what sets the basis for what we're about to get into. But when we jump into this, there's 10 steps to education, okay? And the way you do what you do is how you assimilate that information. Some people have to see it, some people have to hear it, some people have to see it and hear it, and some people have to do it. If they don't do it with their own hands, they don't retain the knowledge. So based on your learning style, which we'll go into that in other videos, there's several books written about that, but here it's more around the steps of education and what you're trying to do. So one, you want to read or listen to, in my mind, at least a dozen to 20 great books if you want to self-educate. And that's what this is about, is how to improve yourself and increase your education if you're limited financially, if you're limited geographically, if you can't get to an institute of higher learning. A lot are online these days, but which ones are accredited, which ones are not. And the suggestion here is just the continuous improvement of your thought process in your mind. I get education from books. So number one resonates for me, read. If you read, you're going to get, and I've said it before, every time you read a book, it's like having a conversation with that author, okay? You're not able to get an input back, so you have to hear the whole thing from their point of view, which is sometimes extremely beneficial. Because in our own lives, in our own world, typically we may not listen effectively, we may not listen efficiently. So when people are talking and giving us the gold, instead of listening, we're waiting on our response or preparing our response. That in itself limits how much you're going to improve from hearing this or learning this, right? So number one, in my mind, would be read. And you can put listen there too. Now you have audiobooks. When you're driving, if you want to prevent wasting time and you don't have time to read at home, audiobooks are a great way to go. And of course, I'm talking about nonfiction here. Fiction is great, storytelling and fiction. Sometimes you can learn a lot from that. But in my mind, I'm talking more about nonfiction and stuff that's around specific ways to do things. So number one is read or listen, and you want to have at least probably start out with a book a month. If you can make yourself read a book a month, that's 12 books a year. If you read 12 books a year and last year you didn't read any, 2024 can be a great year for you, or next year can be a great year for you because you're giving yourself that much more education on a monthly basis. And what you'll find out is when you're reading those things, the level of conversation that you're having with others improves. And so then you'll have a circle of friends that improves because what you're able to speak to and discuss and what you find of interest is expanding. And so as expanding your mind in that way, you'll be a proponent of that growth, and other people that are expanding in that way will be interested in having those conversations with you because you have things of interest to mention. And the other thing is, you're not just basically repeating the book or puppeting the book, but the idea is the book will help you expand your own thought process and your own arguments. And so now you're creating your point of view and it's just getting better. So that's why I recommend that you read or listen to at least 12 great books a year. Great books. And I suggest many, many, many books on this channel. And I've suggested a list of favorites. And at one point, I'll go through the 50 to 60 that I reread every year. And when I go through that, those all are great references and all are great books for anybody to read. So that's number one. And there's a quote here from Mark Twain that says, "The man who doesn't read good books has no advantage over the man that can't read them." So basically, if you're not reading, you're not doing any better for yourself than someone that can't read. So the next suggestion is attend 3 to 4 seminars a year. I try to attend 1 a quarter just because, one, you meet people. So in those seminars, you may meet one person. You may say hi to 60, but you may meet one person that you have a follow-up conversation with or something like that later that something beneficial or true can come from. So I suggest that you do attend that each year because it's a way to improve. It's a way to do something dedicated to your own growth outside of what you would get on the job or at school. So that's a great way. Attend 3 to 4 seminars. Typically, those seminars are going to be like what we said earlier. You're going to hear from people that do these things that you want to do or have done these things that you're wanting to do. And by listening from that, you can learn from their firsthand experience versus trying to make some mistakes that they've already made. And that's wisdom. Being dumb is doing the same thing other people have done so you can make the same mistakes. Being smart is learning from other people's mistakes so you don't make them yourself. And when you do that, you start farther along than they did because you're starting at a point that's better than where they did because you already have that understanding. So attend 3 to 4 seminars a year. Man's mind, once stretched by a new idea, never regains its original dimensions. That's Oliver Wendell Holmes. Man's mind, once stretched by a new idea, never regains its original dimensions. So that's a positive quote around that. But here's the other thing, too. Albert Einstein said, the thought that puts you into a spot will not get you out of it. So, for example, when I talk about leaderships and team, if you have a leader that doesn't listen to his team and he makes small mind micromanagement type decisions, he's keeping the whole team down. And that's not going to correct itself until that leader, he or she, is gone, right? Because you bring on new people, you bring on smart leaders, and what you have to do is get out of their way and let them improve the situation. The same thinking that puts you into a position will not get you out of it. So expanding the mind and attending these seminars, that's how you stretch your dimensions and increase your knowledge. Number 3 is work on improving your emotional intelligence. We talk about emotional intelligence regularly on the channel, but also we talk about Stoicism. The two go hand in hand. Emotional intelligence suggests that you can stand outside of a situation, learn from it, and hear all sides so you can make the best judgment and respond in the best manner. Stoicism says you know that 90% of what happens in the world you have no control of, and 90% is how you respond. 10% is the actual event. So you don't want to let emotion dominate your responses to things because then you have no control. So emotional intelligence shows that. And also, emotional intelligence is the ability to use and manage your emotions in a positive way to relieve stress, to communicate effectively, to overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. If you're not letting emotion beat you up, you can find a resolution to just about everything. So emotional intelligence is an extremely important asset, and if you don't focus on improving it, it won't improve. So number 3 is working on improving your emotional intelligence. There's a Chinese proverb that says, learning is a treasure that will follow its owner everywhere. That's the thing. What you know, you take it with you every day. You take it with you everywhere you go, so you can't lose that. That's the only thing. Benjamin Franklin said that the wise man would invest everything he has into his education because you can't lose that. A house can burn down, a library can burn down, but the more you put in your head, the more money you spend on that, it's not wasted. It's improving you and it's allowing you to impact your life in a better way. The suggestion is the more you educate yourself, the more value you're going to be to more people, and then you're going to be able to earn more. That's the big point about education and wisdom. Do it for yourself selfishly just because you want to grow. But the secondary component is typically you make more money because you have that wisdom and you can be a supplier of solutions versus someone else that's in the fray that's freaking out about nothing. Number 4 is listen to 3 to 4 informational on-demand radio programs and read 3 or 4 blogs each day. So this is a little bit older suggestion, but I would say this. If you find a good YouTube channel, like this one, or a YouTube channel that's not giving you political noise and a bunch of garbage, it's very temporary thought type thing, and you glean something from each episode, then do that. Follow those things. Watch 3 to 4 a week. Try to have that in front of you. Remember when we talked about diet? What you listen to, what you read, what you see, what you hear, what you tell yourself, that's your diet. This is just one way that listen to 3 or 4 of those informational things a week. It may make you think of something sideways that you weren't going to think about before, and you're like, hey, that's actually a solution. Or it may help you in your thinking process just because you have other ideas. Or maybe it was your idea, but now you heard it out loud, and now you have some confidence. All right, maybe it's not that stupid because somebody else said it too. So whatever it may be, it could be confirmation, it could be education, it could be supportive, but make sure you're getting that regularly. And in here, it's got a quote from Henry S. Haskins. The man who is too old to learn was probably always too old to learn. Basically, start learning, start loving learning now. Love wisdom. This this channel, Wisdom of All Mankind. I call it that because I intend to read as many books and travel and see as many things and talk to as many people. So every piece of wisdom I can glean, I ultimately can share on this channel. Not because it's my wisdom, but it's what I actively hunted down. The videos I put on this channel were just readings and things I was going to study on my own. So I was going to do it myself anyway. By doing that and then teaching the key concepts here on this channel, I hopefully can impact other people, but saying it out loud and doing that secondary piece of teaching and sharing, that helps me learn and maintain the material better myself. So it can be a selfish situation that can then benefit others as well. Number 5 is take 2 or 3 courses in areas of interest. I would suggest this greatly because you may just scratch the surface and think, hey, I've actually got some skill at that. And a course may show you where you're strong. And it's kind of what we said in one of our previous videos around self-assessment. A course may show you something about yourself. It may teach you something that can be a benefit to you. It may help you earn more. It may help you communicate more or understand better. So make sure you're looking at that too. There's several different options, that gives us references, but make sure that you're taking courses in an area of interest, and it can be anywhere. Guys, there's community colleges in every town, okay? There's colleges online. Penn Foster is online. There's tons of different small schools. It's as inexpensive or expensive as you want it to be. There's certifications on Google that you can get that I think they start at free, and some are 15 or 20 bucks. Now they go up from there, but you have tons of options to take a course and see if you have interest and do those things. If you're not prepared, and here's a quote from Sir Ken Robertson, if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with something original. That's the other thing. You got to be brave and jump out there. If you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with something original. Be brave and get out there. You have one life to live. There's no dress rehearsal. There's no practice. So you got to get out there and live full contact is what I say. Do everything you can to the best you can to improve yourself the best you can. Number 6 is reach out to help from someone else. Unfortunately, we're taught in the modern world that it's weakness to ask for help. Remember what I said about the earliest education systems. It was apprenticeships where one person was literally pouring their head into the head of another person. You have to ask for help. Otherwise, you may stop forward motion. The idea is not movement. It is actually improvement, right? It's progress, not movement, right? So you want to progress. If you have to ask a question to move forward, then do it. I ask questions of people often. That's also why I give information here, so people can ask those questions of me. And you'll learn a lot. And also, like I said earlier, it comes from their experience. Why suffer a mistake that someone else has already suffered? Get the feedback from them and step beyond that and be farther along than they were at your level. Number 7, acquire at least one new skill a year. That's hugely important. Your brain is just like any other muscle, and that's why I suggest reading as well. Your retention and your sharpness depends on what you put in it and how you use it, okay? So if you're not reading books and you're not teaching yourself new skills and you're not doing these things, excuse me, our diets and what we do in modern society leads to all sorts of memory loss and mental functions or mental dysfunctions. When you think about Alzheimer's and short-term and long-term memory loss, to battle those things and combat those things, yes, you can improve your diet and eat in a healthy manner, which should help you there, but action and activity around the brain and those type things keep you growing and keep you smart and keep you sharp. Your brain is an electric organ, right? So the more you're firing in your head, the more those things are going off and thought process and creative mentalities are being used, the sharper you're going to be and the younger you're going to be inside. So that's what you have to think about is acquire at least one new skill a year. Keep that growth going. Number 8 is become comfortable with your presentation skills. I cannot tell you how big that is. Communicate effectively and efficiently. Find reasons to get up in front of people and improve those presentation skills. Now we can do a lot of presentations on Zoom, so there's no reason to ever be afraid of doing that. But try to get out there and do that. Henry Ford said, anyone who stops learning is old, whether they're at 20 or at 80. That's similar to that earlier quote, right? Become comfortable with your presentation skills is number 8. Number 9, design your own health and fitness program. Improve what you expect to improve. Health and fitness for me has always been part of my life. I've been an athlete since I was a very young person, and I grew up on a farm, so I was working outdoors. There was always something that was useful to keep me active. Designing a health and fitness program, the longer you do that, the more active you stay, the healthier you'll be at the end of your life if you get to a long life. So that's a great suggestion. Design your own health and fitness program. The reason you want to design it is because if you hate what you're doing, you won't do it. But if it's something that you find fun, you will do it, and you'll be able to sustain it for longer, and you will improve yourself that much better. Number 10 is plan 2 trips every year. So this is on here because when you go and you travel, you meet other people and you get their opinions and you get their feedback and you get to study their culture and you get to see what motivates them. And I'm talking about real culture, mostly local type items. By doing this, you can get some culture in the world and learn some things that you may not have known before, or find some foods that are pretty great that you didn't know were out there, right? Or find authors, or meet someone that has got great conversations. By traveling, you get out of your local norm and you're able to go somewhere completely different and see things for what they are there. That was something that I liked about being an executive in business, is traveling the country and seeing places for what they are, and then spending some time there, and then you get to learn people and get to participate in some of those things. And that's a lot of fun and a great way to grow. So I hope this is useful information to you. This is 10 ways to achieve additional education. Remember, education doesn't have to come from a university, but it does have to come. You do have to learn education. You have to go after it. That's the only way to grow, and that's the only way to sustain that growth. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Please like and share. Please share this with folks that you think might glean something from it where it can improve their lives, okay? And last, I ask a big favor that everyone watch the videos, subscribe. About 80% of the people that are watching the videos right now are not subscribed, so please hit that subscribe button if you could. I try to put up new videos every week, 5 to 6 a week, so do that and check that out. I'm Ben. Be good.